I think it'd be good to come up with a plan, whatever plan feels sustainable for you, and then stick to the plan. The thing about habits with babies around like eating and sleeping is that whatever we allow them to do, like they're going to do. Like, if we're like nursing them consistently at night because they're wanting that, then they'll just keep wanting it and we'll keep giving it to them. And so often what needs to happen is we like first create a plan around like what we're going to shift. And then for you to feel like really calm and solid in the plan. Because if you're like, I don't know about this, and like if you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, she's going to feel that in her nervous system and she'll have a harder time regulating. But if you're like, I'm solid on this plan and you can be regulated, it's going to be much more beneficial for her and she'll feel that and it will be more successful. I think that you too would find that it would be more successful if your partner did this because you are the booby lady. So she has all of her associations around avoiding solids and around nursing at night to link her sleep cycles. You're the person who gives her that. So she's going to protest so much more if you're the one who's doing the sleep training, which my approach is way more gentle than like the cry it out method or anything like that. When you're introducing new things to her, new pathways for sleep, she's going to have a harder time, I think, if the boob is right there. She's going to be like, what the heck? Why aren't you giving it to me? And your partner is the one that does this. I think you'll find more success. It usually takes about 3 to 5 days. And I will say I'm not like a sleep training expert, but I've learned a lot about it. So first you feel really solid in the plan. You're removed from the situation. So you're not the one who's doing it and your partner is doing it. So when we do sleep training with kiddos, there are lots of different approaches to take. But really the point, like what it is that you're doing is you're inviting your child to create a new pathway for sleep. Right now, her current pathway for sleep is to use the breast, and that's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And like if you're not getting sleep, like this is the time it sounds like to encourage her to make that transition. And let's first start talking about routines. Routine is everything. If your baby is overtired or undertired, this isn't going to go very well, transitioning them to a new space. And also, if there isn't a routine that's really, really consistent every night, it will be harder for them to build associations to what's going on. And the associations and the consistency of the routine is what helps the baby to cue their brain to release melatonin and be like, it's time to sleep. So if we're trying to get them to create independent sleep skills while they are undertired or overtired, or they don't have the associations in the routine, then it won't be as successful, especially if they're overtired. I would never try to sleep train if your baby's overtired. I would just use the boob and get them to sleep and try again the next day, because when they're overtired, they release adrenaline and then it's like impossible to get them to sleep. So it'll just be a nightmare to try to sleep train. So the first like baby step that you can take is to, starting today, if you can, just create a really consistent bedtime routine and add a few more elements to teach her that it's sleep time. And so if you could do a bath every night, baths are great because they're really calming. There's something about like getting out of a warm bath and getting in jammies that feels really relaxing. So if you can consistently do bath, do a feed right after the bath, like a nurse, and then you can like sing her a song and dim the lights low. I would read her a book. Just like hold up 2 books and let her pick the one she wants, like a little board book. Even if she's not into books that much yet, you could just like flip through it. And something about that element, it just adds another cue to her brain that like, this is the thing we do before we go to bed. So read her a book. If she's still like crazy, fussy, like, rah, I would just kind of like walk her around and soothe her and just tell her like, it's time to go to bed, and keep the lights really low until she starts to kind of like seem a little more calm. And then when she's nice and calm, then we do the thing where we go to sleep. So maybe whatever the thing is, for you now, I would say like you can continue to do the nursing to sleep until you're ready to do the sleep training. But before that, start practicing today, creating a really consistent routine for bedtime that has a few more of those elements, and just do the exact same thing at the exact same time every single night. Some parents just like kind of just put their kids to bed whenever, and that's fine. And I've learned after having 3 kids that for my sanity with 3 of them, like at 7:01, if they're not in the bed, I'm gonna lose my mind. Like I'm just like, everyone's in bed at 7, and that's like the way that it is. It's super consistent, and it's been really effective. Kids thrive with consistency. They do really well with structure, consistency, and routine, especially when it comes to sleep. So I would like pick the time that she goes to bed. Probably 7 is a good time. Put her down at that time. And I think she should stretch like 12 hours at night. And so if she's waking up really early when you put her to bed at 7, it's just because she's not linking her last sleep cycle, because she needs your breast to link the sleep cycles, and she doesn't have independent sleep skills yet. And so usually when kiddos have sleep associations, they wake up at like 5 a.m. for the day, because they have they have less sleepy hormones in the early morning, but they're not quite ready to actually wake up. They do need another sleep cycle. And so I think once you do this and she creates independent sleep habits, she'll wake up at like 7 in the morning. She'll sleep a little longer. When does she nap during the day? I think she's probably ready for 1 nap a day. Hearing that she's protesting the second nap, and she's in the appropriate age range to do 1 nap a day. So I wonder if you could put her down at 11:30, or if you notice tired signs, because you don't want her to be overtired. So if she's rubbing her eyes and clearly really fussy and exhausted, please put her down. But if you could stretch it to 11:30 or even noon with the goal that she'll sleep for an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours, that I think would be really ideal. And to not let her sleep anytime after 4. She can get a little bit tired sometimes, like at the end of the day, they can get a little tired. And usually they just need a surge of awake hormones, and then they go through another wake cycle. If you do something stimulating like water play, or like tangible, like with her hands, that's really fun. Even putting her hands under some water for a little bit to get her to kind of like wake up. If she's seeming kind of fussy, tired, like by 5, 6, something like that, I would do that and kind of reawaken her, and then go back to, the routine of going to bed at that time you guys usually do. I think sticking with 8 is good, but pretty soon I think you could switch her over to 7 a.m. to 6, or 7 p.m. to 6:30, 7 a.m. And she could sleep for 12 hours straight. Right now she is in a developmentally appropriate place to sleep for 12 hours straight without feeding, and to take an hour and a half to 2 hour nap. And with the independent sleep skills, she can go down by herself. This is what's possible. And it's amazing to really get there. And it really doesn't take that much work to do it. It's usually just like 3 to 5 days of like commitment. And then going forward for the rest of her baby life, you have to just be so committed to being really, really consistent every day with the time she goes down for nap and the time she goes down for bed, and to not ever reoffer the breast for naps again once you make the shift, because that is when babies start to get really confused. There are lots of different sleep associations babies can have. And for pregnant mamas who are listening right now, like in the first 3 months, sleep associations isn't a thing. So do whatever you want to do to get your baby down, nursing, bouncing, whatever. Once your baby hits 3 months, that's when sleep associations can start to come into play. And so if you want to continue nursing or bouncing or whatever it is you do to get baby to sleep, that's fine, but they might develop an association, meaning they can't go to sleep without that thing. And so right now, Lillian, she uses the breast, but I invite you to also just kind of consider or be aware if she gets drowsy or sleepy from like the stroller or the car or anything like that. You can see it might be better to avoid those things, because she could also have a pathway to sleep through the car or the stroller or whatever, or the carrier, and that could make her confused and disrupt her independent sleep skills. But other babies aren't as sensitive to the car and the stroller or the carrier, and they can fall asleep occasionally there, and it doesn't impact their sleep skills independently. So you just kind of have to see how that goes. A really great habit to create as soon as your baby is around 3 months old, if you're wanting to avoid the sleep association, or like now if you're ready to sleep train and break the association, is to do sleep, eat, play. Sleep, eat, play. And just like that is the thing we do. So that means that you don't use milk to put her to sleep anymore. And you feed her every time she wakes up. And whenever you feed her, you like stimulate her, tickle her toes, sing to her, talk to her, be like, we're awake now. We eat when we're awake. Yay. And just like make it like really clear. And it's just so important that you never go back to letting her fall asleep again, because that'll be confusing. If she gets drowsy, that's the first stage of sleep. So not just like falling asleep can confuse her, but getting drowsy can confuse her too. So just nurse her when she wakes up in the morning, when she wakes up from her nap, and then I would do a feed before she goes to bed, like maybe after the bath, but I would make it like we're awake still, it's awake time, and then after the feed, we're gonna like soothe and start going to bed. But just be really careful with that last one and make sure she doesn't get drowsy. She sounds like my third baby, obsessed with the boob and wouldn't want anything else. And so it was the right choice for us to have my husband do the feeds. If you like, especially in the first few days you start this, I would start this like Saturday morning and just have a really clear plan with both of you 100% committed to like doing it, and having your partner do the feed when she wakes up in the morning, like have the bottle ready or pump, and then be like, here's your bottle, I'm feeding you now, and just tell her what's going on, because she knows like this is like you and I like special time and I get to feed you. And she might be like, well, I don't want that. Yeah, she'll learn to love it. My baby hated it, and we worked really hard for months and we tried a million different bottles. It was a nightmare. It's like my other babies took a bottle just fine and he was just so like resistant to it. But what I found to be the most effective was to remove myself from the room and for them to be totally separate or even outside and doing the feed. And sometimes she'll just drink a little bit, and that's okay. And you can just try again. If she's just like, I hate it, I don't want it, whatever, just like, okay, we're gonna just take you on a walk in the stroller and we're going to go do something else. And then we're going to come back and we're going to try again. She will protest because she's like, what the heck? You guys are changing up the thing that I do. But after a day or two, it will get a lot easier. Especially, it's possible that even after the first couple tries, it'll get easier. It just depends on her. But the less you like cave, and like give her the breast, the better she'll transition. And honestly, it might be better if you just like are out of the house for the day. Really try to separate yourself from her and close the door and rest in your room for the day, and like don't interact with her too much when you're around that nap time or when you're around feed time. After feed, then like maybe we can be with mama and play, but like we're not nursing, we just got to like break it really clear and do everything you can to avoid kind of going back and forth between bottle and boob. Because as long as the boob is an option, she's going to keep preferring it, and it'll just prolong the process. When you do the sleep training, I think it might be beneficial, honestly, for your baby to just do all of this in one go, to just be like, the day's the day that I am no longer giving you the breast, at least to like break the sleep association and the nursing association, and for you to separate yourself and let him do this work. This is like, I highly recommend the dads do this work because it's so much harder for the moms. And for him to do this, you sleep and then you eat and then you play, sleep, eat, play, to do that routine and to put her down for bed however he can. You don't have to do a like her putting her in the bed and having her cry to fall asleep on her own type of thing. If he could just like soothe her in his arms and put her down, then that's great. And maybe that's what you guys start with. It sounds like he already kind of knows how to get her down on his own. And at the same time, you could try it this round or next round if you're wanting her to sleep longer throughout the night. It's possible right now if he rocks her to sleep in his arms and puts her down and she breaks the nursing association, she might sleep through the night, but she still could, since she still doesn't have like strong independent sleep skills where she knows how to go from consciousness to unconsciousness by herself. She might wake up from a sleep cycle, and which is like every 45 minutes, and then be like, what the heck, like I need a tool to get to sleep and my tool is in here, and be upset, and you guys need to get up with her at night. And I will say that for the newborn sleep stuff, I have a really like well done newborn sleep course in the classrooms tab in the academy. It's called the Newborn Sleep Blueprint, and it just goes over exactly what to do. So you're welcome to watch that too. So basically, like there's a difference between breaking a sleep association and preventing a sleep association. So at the beginning, when your baby's born, nursing them on your breast is not going to create a sleep association. Nursing them to sleep is not going to create a sleep association. It's biologically normal to nurse your baby to sleep. Your milk has hormones that help your baby fall asleep. And when you produce milk at night and nurse them, it has melatonin in it. So they sleep better and longer at night. It teaches them like to balance their rhythm basically, and like what's night and what's day. It's really amazing. Don't worry about like that in the beginning, but once you hit 2.5 to 3 months, I would start at 2.5 months. That's when sleep associations can start to creep in. So for the first 8 weeks, like do whatever you want to get your baby to sleep, nurse them, bounce them, whatever, it doesn't matter. When you get to 2.5 months, I would, or maybe even 2, like you could just kind of start thinking about how you want sleep to go a little differently. And like by 2.5, have a plan and be setting that plan in place for transitioning them from falling asleep on the boob, which is what most babies do, to doing something else to put them to sleep, basically. Soothe your baby to sleep in ways that you feel good about, that isn't going to create like a really strong association like the nursing. And so typically that's just like bouncing your baby, walking around to get them to sleep. You know, the fundamentals are have a really strict routine. By the time your baby is 3 months old, they'll be ready for you to like fully begin this, and they'll be ready for a routine. Before then, sleep is kind of random, which is why you're just nursing and sleeping. The baby's just napping on you all the time and in the carrier. When you get to 3 months of age, they could sleep in their crib or they could sleep on you in a carrier. Either way is fine. So do whatever one you want to do. Sometimes carriers can create an association and sometimes it doesn't. So you just kind of have to check with your baby. If your baby is like waking up every hour and they won't sleep unless you have them in the carrier, then they have an association to it and you might have to create a different path. So around 3 months of age, like first create the routine. There's a specific wake window. So you just want to pay attention whenever your baby's awake, when do they wake up, and just check in to like how long it's been. And if you start to notice tired signs and it's been, I can't remember the wake window, maybe it's 2 hours, then it's time to put them down for another nap, either in the crib by like walking them around to soothe them and set them in the crib, or bounce them in the carrier and let them sleep on you in the carrier. Either one is fine. And I don't sleep train for naps at first, because naps can be a little harder. Instead, and when I say sleep train, it's really just offering independent sleep skills, supporting them and creating that. I do that at night. So during the day, you're going to have your consistent routine where you're just making sure baby never gets overtired, because that's when shit hits the fan. And it's like they wake up all night because they're overtired. It's hard to put them down. Like it just makes everything horrible. So just like make sure your baby's getting all the naps they need to get, which is why having them sleep in the carrier for naps around 3 months is so excellent, because you walking around helps them to link their sleep cycles and have longer naps, and they typically are less overtired, or they're not overtired when you get to bedtime. When you get to bedtime and you're ready to introduce an independent sleep skill. So this part, Lillian, applies for your kiddo now and also for like your 3-month-old if you want to do this at 3 months. So you would first like have mom not do this probably if there's any sort of nursing association. If there isn't, then it's probably fine for mom to do it. And you can feel out your kiddo because every kid's a little different. So you do the routine for bedtime that you have been doing consistently already for a long time. So they already have the melatonin producing association to it, and they're not overtired because they got all the naps they needed that day. And then at the same time, every night, you're going to turn off the lights and make it very dark. You don't want to have any light in the room. A sound machine, and the temperature be good. You want it not to be too cold or too hot. If it's too hot, it's hard to fall asleep. So just making sure the kiddos aren't too hot. And then put them in their cozy sleep suit that you have been putting them in consistently, whether they're sleeping in bed with you or whatever until that point. So you have all the elements that they're used to and they feel really nice and cozy. And then I would bounce them around until they are drowsy, but do not let them fall asleep in your arms. So typically parents will get the baby to sleep and then put them down. So this time I want you to get your baby drowsy so they get heavy on your body and they get close to falling asleep, but you don't want them to actually fall asleep in your arms. So just really carefully and gently put your baby down in the crib. If the crib is really low down, it feels like a huge drop. So you might want your crib to be up a little higher If they're not standing in the crib, it's safe for it to be the mattress to be a little higher. Usually cribs are adjustable. So I put the baby down, and then the baby is probably gonna, since they're not fully asleep, gonna protest because they're like, what the heck? You usually get me all the way to sleep by walking me. And so they're going to cry. And so I typically invite parents to get a chair and sit next to the crib, put on noise canceling headphones with music or something. Otherwise, you're gonna lose your shit. And then this is why like mom can't do this. It's harder for mom. I just like, for those 3 days, I'm like hiding downstairs, like not listening because it's like stressful. But it's so worth it. Your baby's never being left alone. They're just upset that the pathway for sleep is being taken away from them, and they're kind of like, what the heck, as you're trying to like encourage them to develop a new pathway. But they're not hurting. They're not hungry. They're not like being deprived of anything, and they're with someone and they're getting touch, so they're not like left alone, and they know that they're not alone. So it's more gentle than just like the cry it out method where you just put them in and leave. Some babies, however, if you like are there and you just have your hand on them while they cry until they fall asleep, you're my person and I feel awake and stimulated with you here. And so like, why are you here? Like, I want to be awake. So some babies actually do better if you are gone and you're not like just there with them. But for all my babies, we did like have my husband stay with them, and that worked better for them. They were a little more freaked out and would cry more when you leave. So here's what you need to know about crying and when the crying is okay and when it's not okay. And this was the part I was stressed about. Have noise canceling headphones and you'll still hear the crying, and you can always remove them if you want to like hear it better. I would listen for the sounds they're making and listen for an escalation or a de-escalation. So if your baby is doing this, they're working out cortisol from their system from the day. They're putting themselves to sleep. So it's so important you don't disrupt this. And this is where habits set in early on. In the newborn sleep class, I talk about how to avoid this like way deeper. So you can look at that. If we interrupt our baby in creating their own independent sleep pathway, then they're never going to create it. And that's often what creates problems. Listen for the sounds. And if they're kind of like, they're like going down and up and down, they're getting themselves down. And it could take a while. It could take 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Just let them do that. If they start to go from their baseline of like, wah, wah, they're escalating and they're not regulating their nervous system well. If that happens, you want to just pick the baby up and repeat. Walk them around the room until they calm their body and they get like nice and heavy on you again, but don't let them fall asleep. Just let them get drowsy and then put them down and do it again. Sit in the chair and put your hand on their belly or on their chest. When your hand is on their chest, it's a way to regulate their nervous system. It's called heavy hands. So you want to put like the weight of your hand on their chest, give it another little bit and see what happens. I would not pick them up unless they're escalating. They could cry and be like crying and like up and down for 45 minutes. If you get to 45 minutes and they haven't gone down, I would just put them down how you normally do without the boob. I would just like get them to sleep in your arms and put them down and try again the next day. They might just be too exhausted. And if your baby's overtired, they're going to release adrenaline and it'll be harder to get them to sleep. And then also they'll wake several times at night because they're overtired. Just try again next time. There's so much power in having a really consistent routine that prevents overtiredness. And then having a really consistent bedtime routine that cues her brain to release melatonin. What matters is that you're doing it in a way that is sustainable and you're both fully committed, because it's just going to prolong the experience and make it really confusing for her if you go back and forth with any of it.